Yes, really. That title is not in any way ironic. I really am going to talk about the various swimming mechanics in Kingdom Hearts for more than 20 minutes. Am I an insane person? Yeah, obviously. You really think anyone with a healthy mental state would debase themselves to do this? Though I might as well mention that this isn't entirely a video about just swimming, and I'll be discussing more broad topics that relate to the mechanic. I'm sorry if you're mad about that, but if you clicked on a video titled Swimming in Kingdom Hearts, I think you're more open-minded than most. But enough with the useless preamble, let's get into this, starting with the game that has saved multiple nations from collapse, Kingdom Hearts 1.
Sebastian can show you how we swim around here.
Kingdom Hearts 1 is by far the most water-pilled game in the franchise, and I think that's pretty obvious if you have any familiarity with the series. Not only is it the only game to have a traditional full world be entirely waterlogged in Atlantica, but there are 6 other worlds with swimmable water, and you might not have realized that. KH1 has 2 types of swimming in the game, the full-on 3D dimensional movement seen in Atlantica, but also surface swimming, which has Sora treading water without diving. And yeah, 6 worlds have some form of surface swimming. Destiny Islands with the water past the beach, Traverse Town in the mystical house area and the secret waterway, Deep Jungle and Hippo Lagoon, Agrabah in the lower areas of the Cave of Wonders, Monstro in the mouth area, and 100 Acre Woods, specifically this tiny patch of water in the Honey Tree area. Kingdom Hearts 1 uses swimming and water hazards as a huge aspect of its level design, and really water as a whole is used across the game even outside of swimming. Hollow Bastion has its bubble mechanic put to great use for the lower levels of the castle, and water is used aesthetically for this river under a bridge in Halloween Town, though I really wouldn't drink that water specifically, all around you in Neverland and for this shallow lake in Wonderland. Really, the only worlds that lack water are Olympus Coliseum, which is only 3 rooms big, and End of the World, unless you count the Atlantica room for the latter, but whatever, but that makes sense. It's the end of the world, it's supposed to be this desolate wasteland, and removing a constant throughout the game, water, makes it feel more alien and desolate. So yeah, Kingdom Hearts 1 truly uses water very well. It feels as important as ground and sky, and those 3 are kind of reoccurring themes in the series. So why does Dread appear when you think about Kingdom Hearts 1 and water? Well, it's obviously because of Atlantica. The world has pretty much always been one of the main points of criticism for the game, even back when it released in 2002. People have probably complained enough about Atlantica to make a novel as long as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and like, I kinda get it. I do think Atlantica is my least favorite non-minigame world in KH1 because it's simply the most flawed. The world is very hard to traverse because most of it meshes together into a blue-gray void, so much so that the devs put little trident symbols showing the way to the palace very explicitly, so they knew this place was hard to navigate, and instead of making the rooms more unique, they put these very distracting waypoints all around. They didn't even really need to mess with the layout that much, it's just there's 2 big open ocean areas. Make one of them green or something, I don't know. There's landmarks, yeah, like Ariel's Grotto, but I think the world could have used more. Have one area have a giant King Triton statue in it or something. Just make them recognizable at a glance. Of course, not to brag or anything, but I can traverse the waters pretty easily nowadays. But that was after like 10 plus replaythroughs. I play this game way too much to be considered healthy. The first time I put the disc in, I got lost very consistently, and that's not even mentioning what I think is the world's biggest sin, the dolphin, and not even really because of anything the creature has done. I just wish the game made it more clear what you have to do. Technically, Flounder talks about it, but you have to go out of your way to talk to him, which most first-time players probably won't think to do. I know I didn't, and even then, the poor fish doesn't mention that you have to grab its dorsal fin in the undersea valley, go to the undersea gorge, grab its dorsal fin again, and then he'll take you to the sunken ship. If he just took you to the sunken ship from the undersea valley, I don't think it would be that big of an issue. Or if we just skipped the undersea valley altogether and he just started out in the undersea gorge, that'd also be fine, but no, you have to do one thing in one location to do something somewhere else. And when you grab the dolphin in the undersea valley, it's not like he swims away to the undersea gorge. No, he just continues going around in circles, and when when you get to the undersea gorge, he's just magically there all of a sudden. It's incredibly confusing. But those, and I guess the swimming controls not being the greatest in the world, are really my only issues with Atlantica, and I'd honestly say that I like it. Even though a lot of the world blends together, there are some very strong locations that don't, like the sunken ship and the various rooms within Ursula's lair. The sunken ship especially is a very cool location, with tons of good treasure chest locations and an actual honest to Hercules jump scare. The boss fights here are not bad at all. The shark is incredibly simple, but I think it gets a pass because of the aforementioned jump scare. It makes it incredibly memorable, despite the fight itself being pretty nothing. Both Ursula fights are also fairly solid. Her giant form might be a bit annoying since you have to constantly run away when she summons her giant thunderbolts, but each attack having a specific voice cue makes it quite fun to learn, and I've always found the atmosphere quite nice. Base Ursula is far less cool, but I do love how the game basically forces you to do magic here for her mysterious paw, and that's something the world does quite well overall. This aspect was brought to my attention in a regular Pat video, so don't give me any credit here, I just wanted to briefly mention it. Atlantica is incredibly magic-centric, with clams that only open with specific spells. Ariel is a magic-focused party member, Crabclaw is a magic-focused Keyblade, Ursula's famous paw is only affected by magic. There's definitely a theme here, and I find Atlantica's combat much more manageable when I focus on using blizzards or fires to take out the enemies instead of swimming to them and slowly bashing their heads in. I haven't mentioned Atlantica's story yet, but I think it's quite solid. King Triton knowing about the Keyblade is such an interesting moment in the game, and I think KH1 does a great job at adapting the Little Mermaid's characters in an interesting way. I've always found Ursula to be one of the less important members of the Villain Council though. I mean, Jafar is basically the second in command, Hook has the Jolly Roger, and Hades' persistence across the game and the series makes him memorable. Oogie Boogie also doesn't do much, but he's kind of a joke character to begin with, and he and Hades are the two members who even mentioned their old team up in a KH2 cutscene. I don't know, it's not an actual issue, just something I kind of found interesting. Well, that turned out to be more so a review of KH1 Atlantica than specifically the swimming mechanic. Maybe a topic so vague was bound to result in tangents. Huh. But I forgot to bring up Mermaid Kick, which is one of the game's 4 shared abilities, alongside High Jump, Glide, and Super Glide. If that says anything about KH1 being super water-pilled, I don't know what else will. Mermaid Kick is mostly used exclusively in Atlantica, and you can use it to move faster and also swim through strong currents, though it can be used when surface swimming to get a small boost of speed and a small jump, which might allow Sora to get on specific low platforms in the water. But that's mostly it for swimming in KH1. I could mention how you have to use the mechanic to catch fish in the opening of the game on Destiny Islands, or how on my first playthrough I had an incredibly hard time navigating the lower sections of the Cave of Wonders because I just assumed these waterfalls were one way only and I couldn't swim back up after I fell down. I was an idiot, but mentioning those would just feel like padding. Though I guess I did just mention them. Fuck.
When we go to the beach, she'd draw a picture instead of swimming.
It's probably weird to talk about Chain of Memories in a video about swimming since Chain of Memories doesn't have any swimming, but I wanted to briefly mention the game because Atlantica appears as a world, and it's kind of weird that a world entirely located underwater has no swimming mechanics. Instead, the game just waves a vague excuse that the magic of the castle allows Sora and the game to breathe underwater or something like that, which makes it completely impossible for Ariel not to realize Sora is a human, but whatever. In general, Chain of Memories does a lot of vague memory magic stuff to justify the Disney worlds existing in the first place, so it's not a huge deal, it's just kind of jarring for Atlantica specifically. They obviously just didn't want to make a unique swimming mechanic to interact with the game's card system, and that's fine, I guess. As a world, Atlantica is definitely one of them. Calm worlds in general don't really have a lot distinguishing them, they really only have the story and boss fights to set them apart. Atlantica and Calm basically just has a watered down version of the story from KH1, and Giant Ursula is fine. It's kind of fun, but needing to take out all her tentacles to get a chance to attack her directly can be very annoying at times. But in Riku's campaign, and specifically Rechain of Memories, you get the Dark Ball enemy card at Atlantica, which is noteworthy because Sora cannot collect the Dark Ball enemy card in Recon. You see, in the GBA version, the Dark Ball enemy card gave you the ability Card Blind, which hid your deck in a versus battle, but versus battles aren't in the remake, so they changed the effect to Dual Trigger, which lets every card of every value initiate a duel, when usually you have to play a card that has the same value as your opponent's card. And since Riku is the only character who can use the duel system, only he can use the Dark Ball enemy card. I don't know why Atlantica is specifically the world they chose to give him the card in, but I don't know, it's kinda interesting, I guess. Kingdom Hearts 2 isn't really notable for its water, it's actually notable for its surprising lack of it. After KH1 had so much water in its veins, it's weird to see that KH2 has swimming in only one of its 15 worlds, especially since so many have water, just not water that's interactable. Worlds like Timeless River and Port Royal are basically coated in the liquid, yet Sora can never actually touch it. But it does kind of make sense. Like I said before, one of KH1's most common criticisms was Atlantica and its clunky swimming, so for KH2 to distance itself so heavily from it makes sense, at least on paper. And KH2 really does not care about its level design. It's only focused on making a room that you can fight enemies in that kind of evokes the aesthetic of a Disney movie. So why waste your time coding a surface swimming mechanic? In KH1 you cannot attack while surface swimming. You could change the mechanics so that you could attack, but that would require even more resources. Surface swimming doesn't have any combat application, which is KH2's main focus, so swimming is basically worthless for KH2's game design. So yeah, KH2 does not have surface swimming in any way, shape, or form, but it does include full 3D swimming in Atlantica. And Atlantica only has 2 rooms that you can use this mechanic in. The vast majority of the world's content are the songs, rhythm game sections that involve the cast of The Little Mermaid. And Atlantica in KH2 is even more hated on than its KH1's counterpart. People absolutely despise the world. And yeah, I fully get it this time. It just mostly comes down to the absolutely putrid rhythm mechanics on display here. It's not even really a rhythm game, it's more so just a series of quick time events with music in the background. You don't time your button presses to the music, it's not rhythmic in really any way, and it's so boring. There's so much time in between the QTEs, it feels like I'm gonna fall asleep while playing. I don't really want to talk about this too much because it's been done to death and I don't think I have anything to add, but I do think it's really funny how people endlessly criticize KH3's Disney Worlds for just doing the movie plot, while Atlantica literally ignores continuity from KH1 to do the movie plot. Ariel should under no circumstance trust Ursula at all after what she did in KH1, but whatever, we gotta do the movie plot. Why is Ursula alive after she died in KH1? We gotta do the movie plots. Also, Land of Dragons, Port Royal, and Pride Lands have very long stretches of cutscenes that are literally shot-for-shot remakes of the movie scenes, but no one ever talks about that because KH2 is the fan favorite. Anyway, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't really hate KH2 Atlantica. I don't like it, but the songs are quite charming to watch. I think the 3 original songs are pretty bad, though I do have some ironic love for Ursula's Revenge, but hearing Sora sing Under the Sea is very cute, and part of their world is a banger in any form. We should have gotten Kiss the Girl instead of whatever the hell Swim This Way was going for, though. But yeah, honestly, Atlantica isn't even my least favorite KH2 world. I'll take it compared to the absolute nothing that is Disney Castle, and I'd much rather trudge through 700 Atlantica songs than even step foot in Recoded's Olympus Coliseum again. So KH2 Atlantica gets a pass from me, even if it's objectively pretty bad. But if you want to know how a standard KH2 world would work with the swimming mechanic, we can look at Agrabah of all things, because the carpet in the second visit controls very similarly to Atlantica's swimming. And maybe it's a good thing Atlantica wasn't a full world in this game, because Agrabah Troop is truly dreadful, so maybe the musicals are a blessing in disguise.
On the water! Over there!
Birth by Sleep doesn't really do a lot to ignite the swimming fan in me, but I guess it's an improvement. It's kind of the opposite of KH2 because it only has surface swimming with no full 3D swimming. In base Birth by Sleep, the mechanic is only used in Neverland for a couple of rooms, and it's alright. There's this chest hidden in a pretty neat location, so I'd say it's a net positive on the game. But Final Mix actually added a second boss fight that uses the water mechanic, because in Neverland, only Captain Hook uses it. Captain Hook in Birth by Sleep is okay, but it's way simpler than his KH1 fight. But Final Mix gave us Monstro in the Mirage Arena, and I actually quite like this fight. It can be a little annoying during the phases where he swallows you, and you have to defeat hordes of enemies, but just using a quick Mega Flare will make this a piece of cake. And it's neat to beat the shit out of a character who's been in the series since KH1. But that's kind of it with the swimming in Birth by Sleep. There's not a full world based entirely on the mechanic, so there's a lot less to talk about. Radiant Garden and Dwarf Woodlands use water for stuff other than swimming, specifically to blast you to higher platforms, and I really like these mechanics, but they technically are not swimming. But yeah, I've kinda run out of things to say. After rambling for so long, this feels weird.
Once the tide comes in, the dungeon will fill up with water.
Dream Drop Distance's swimming mechanic is basically the same as Birth by Sleep. There's once again only surface swimming, and that's fine, just makes things less interesting. But okay, I do want to mention something only semi-related, but on the KH wiki page titled Swimming, it says, and I quote, "In Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance, surface swimming is the only kind available and is only used in Symphony of Sorcery and Traverse Town." I love you, KH wiki, but this is a big fat lie. Surface swimming is used in Symphony of Sorcery, specifically in the Riku exclusive Snowgleam Wood area, but I looked for like 20 minutes across the entirety of Traverse Town as both characters, and while the world has a lot of water, none of it is swimmable. There's water you can slide across using flow motion in Riku's Backstreet area, and shallow walkable water in the Fountain Court in 5th District, but from what I saw, none of it was swimmable. I could have missed something, but I already know not to trust this quote because Prankster's Paradise has swimmable water in the Riku exclusive mouth area, just like in KH1, so I don't know. But yeah, while complaining about the inaccuracy of a page that's barely a fingernail long, I kinda went over everything the game has in terms of swimming. But I did want to mention that Dream Drop has fully underwater sections in Sora's version of Prankster's Paradise. This would be the perfect time to include full 3D swimming again, but instead, they go the Chain of Memories route, which is fine. At least the physics are more floaty instead of being unchanged. I can understand not wanting to create an entirely different control scheme for a couple rooms in one world, and I think this is a good enough solution. I guess the last thing I have to say is that Country of the Musketeers Mont Saint Michel area has a lot of water, but instead of being swimmable, Sora can just grind on some of the water stream using flow motion again. And that's it. Time for Gauge 3.
Sora could fall into any darkness and swim his way out.
Kingdom Hearts 3 is definitely the second most water-pilled game in the series. I mean, for one, Sora can use water magic for the first time, though Demyx and multiple Dream Eaters have been able to do so before now, but the actual swimmable water is almost entirely relegated to the Caribbean, and it came back in full force. And unlike KH1 and 2, I actually really like how the swimming controls in this game. It feels surprisingly good for a mechanic that's again really only in one world, and they went the extra mile and gave the offensive spells water variants. Fire and Arrow are basically the same but far slower and more weighty, but Thunder is now a ball of homing electricity and Blizzard is now a shotgun blast with multiple thorns firing out in front of Sora, kind of like the KH1's version of Blizzard. Water doesn't get a water variant, which kind of makes sense, but it is kinda weird. But the controls aren't the only thing that's been improved. The underwater exploration is so fun. So many islands in the Caribbean have these underwater sections, and there's hidden treasures and doubloons with interactable and destroyable objects. I love KH3's level design as a whole, and the Caribbean has some of the best of it in the game. Outside of the Caribbean, there's not a lot of stuff to fill our cravings for swimming, but Kingdom of Corona has surface swimming in some of its areas, and there are multiple ingredients in the game exclusive to these swimmable sections. But KH3 finally has given us something we haven't seen since KH1, underwater boss fights, and sad to say, but they're kinda bad. We have two to work with, the first being the Lightning Angler in the Caribbean, and he is one of the worst boss fights in the game. It is not the fault of the actual swimming controls, it's just that the actual boss is not interesting in the slightest. None of his attacks stand out or are hard to avoid. He just lumbers around for a couple minutes until you can finally end the slog. It's not that this is a bad or particularly annoying boss fight, it's just an absolute nothing of an encounter. And for the second underwater fight, we have to leave the Caribbean altogether and go to Scala ad Kylum, the final world of the game. The second phase of the Armored Xehanort fight takes place entirely underwater, and like, I don't hate it, but because you're being reintroduced to a control scheme you probably haven't seen for a good few hours, they had to make the phase super easy as to not make it too frustrating. And since the first and third phases are pretty difficult, it just feels out of place. I do like the theming. Like I said at the start, the Kingdom Hearts series has this consistent trio of land, water, and sky. So for Armored Xehanort, the first phase takes place underground, the second underwater, and the third in the sky above a ruined Scala ad Kylum. It's neat, but I think the actual phase could have been handled better. And that's it. This was an incredibly stupid video topic that I just thought of on a whim, but there actually ended up being quite a bit more to talk about than I would have expected. I don't know how a video on a swimming mechanic is longer than my video on the history of an entire world, but life works in mysterious ways sometimes. Thank you so much for watching this far if you have, and please subscribe if you haven't. I know it's annoying, but it does help. I hate begging for subscribers, but I've been working on this channel for 4 years and I still don't have 500 subscribers, so I might as well amp up my annoying YouTuberisms in a vain attempt to make things better for myself. But yeah, again, thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. See you in the next one.